Next, from the City Club of Chicago, Rich Miller, the publisher of the political newsletter The Capitol Fax, lays out how he sees the Republican race for governor and who may be considered to be ahead in the race for the nomination in the March primary. This runs about 45 minutes.
All right, so one of the questions that I was asked last year when I spoke, last December when I spoke, was, can the Republicans ever win? And I said, well, yeah. In 2010, Mark Kirk won statewide, U.S. Senate, pretty big thing. Judy Barr Topinka won statewide, controller, pretty decent thing. Dan Rutherford won for state treasurer, had been a Democratic office until then. So yeah, Republicans can win. But, Bill Brady lost. And it was 2010. It was the biggest Republican landslide since, Harry Truman's days. And it was that loss was a real kick in the gut. They didn't see, as a party, their wins. They didn't really celebrate their wins. They mourned the loss of that governor's race. And I don't blame them. I mean, how many jobs does a U.S. senator have? Yeah, nothing. What can the U.S. senator do about the remap? Nothing. And the map was going to be redrawn right after that election. And Republicans knew this. And without that office, they had no input into the map. And then look what happened to them. Through some of which, no fault of their own, they got blown out. So one of the things that I like to do, mainly for my own entertainment, and actually my whole life is based on what entertains me. I write about what entertains me. I have a blog, so all these commenters entertain me all day. I don't have any friends, but I have a lot of commenters. I have a lot of subscribers. But that's why I got a dog, because I have no friends. So I had to have somebody around to tell me they love me. But he can't speak, so. But one of the things that I like to do is I like to get people together from disparate backgrounds. Republicans, Democrats, Republicans. Get them together, pour a little alcohol onto the situation and see what happens. It's usually really interesting because they have more in common than they do differing, right? That makes them different. They're all in the same business. They deal with the same sorts of things. I never usually invite candidates to these sorts of things because who wants those people around? But you have staff around, and they're all pretty much the same. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes it works out great. I often have a pre-election party. Last year, Google was nice enough to sponsor my election night party, people, Republicans, Democrats, Republicans, they all showed up, and everybody had a great time except when the returns started coming in, the Republicans all left. Sometimes it doesn't work out well at all. I had a union person at a table with a group of people, and he started a big argument with the Republican at the table, and we had to have him removed from the restaurant. But a couple of weeks ago, one of Bruce Rauner's guys was in town, and so I had some Republican friends who aren't big Rauner fans out. And they didn't know that the Rauner guy was going to be there, so they were a little surprised. And there was too much alcohol, I think, poured on that occasion. And it got a little testy and a little tense. And at one point, the Rauner guy said, you Republicans in Illinois, you suffer from the Stockholm syndrome. Mike Madigan has had you taken hostage for decades, and now you've been hostage so long, you like the guy. And he had actually a pretty good point. he didn't really, he's not from Illinois, so he didn't really understand. I mean, there's no sense in liking him, no sense in really hating him. You got to respect the guy for what he's been able to accomplish, whatever, you know, whether you hate what he's accomplished or not. He's been around forever, and he's a part of our lives, and a part of, you know, he's just a part of much of the State House as the State House is. So he didn't really understand that. They tried to explain it. But he did make a good point, and this goes to the larger point of the question that I got last year. They just don't believe in themselves. And that's really too bad, because I don't happen to believe, despite the map and the situation in the General Assembly, I don't happen to believe that this is an overwhelmingly Democratic state. Look how difficult it was to pass gay marriage. If this was an overwhelmingly blue state, a liberal Democratic state, it wouldn't have taken this long. It wouldn't have taken, Kelly Cassidy wouldn't have had to travel all over Illinois to meet with people on the fence in the summer to get them settled down enough to vote yes on that bill. And she, by the way, is one of the unsung heroes of that legislation. So it's more of a liberal Republican state, in my belief, not, or maybe a conservative Democratic state. But we do end up with, you know, we have Governor Quinn, who's not really a conservative Democrat unless you ask AFSCME. Then he's not even a Democrat, he's Scott Walker. They're really laughing at this table at that joke. But anyway, so I really think that defeatism is just a process of being beaten down for so many years. And it's loser talk. I mean, after 2010, what did you hear from downstate? You know, secession. It's like, man, come on. You know, Jim Edgar actually won Cook County. And you know, in 2010, Brady, God love him, I love the guy a lot. He hardly visited Cook County. So at least now they're thinking about Cook County. But the campaigns of the three best known, at least up till a few months ago, candidates have really been, to my mind, a huge letdown. But I don't think, in Chicago anyway, if you're not a subscriber or you don't read the blog or you don't keep up with this on a regular basis and go out of your way to take some interest, it's really tough to see what's going on in this primary race, because it's just not really getting covered all that much, because the Chicago media, for the most part, doesn't care about Republicans, and who could blame them? You know, when Republicans get like 3 votes in this town, if that. So, but there are some real problems here. Brady, take Bill Brady, okay? He has the same theme as 2010, which is a good theme. It's conservatism, it's Reagan-esque, it's cut the budget, it's get rid of the Department of Education. You know, it's very Newt Gingrich, Ronald Reagan-esque. But he's raised absolutely no money. I took a look this morning at 2009, which is the same place we are now in the cycle. And the last 6 months of 2009, he raised $460-some thousand for his gubernatorial campaign. Last 6 months, he's raised about $3.45, I think. It's actually more like $70,000, which is about what I raised a year and a half ago in this room for Lutheran Social Services. And we sold out those tickets in like 11 minutes or something. It's so bad on that campaign, they're recycling pop cans for gas money. So, yeah, I've been trying that one out for about a week. Yeah, it needs a little more work. Damn it, I'm gonna use it again, because it's mine. Dan Rutherford, the treasurer, is raising some kind of money, but not big money. He's sitting on $1 million, but he's really not raising all that much money. He wants to hold it for the end. But, you know, we have early voting in Illinois. People start voting a month before the election. By the time all his money is spent, half the people will have already voted. And he's got really, I guess his theme would be, if you held a gun to my head, I would say it would be smart governance or good governance. But you really have to kind of pull that out of him. It's not something that he hammers on. Other than that, he spends too much time talking about how, you know, he was elected statewide and he's the most electable candidate for next year, which really isn't. I mean, it's not a theme that actually can win a primary. Kirk Dillard. He's got no money and no theme. He's got the worst of both worlds. Dillard did pretty well in the 2010 primary until Andy McKenna started running those ads, running the TV ads with Barack Obama. That Dillard had done an ad for Barack years ago, and that's, yeah, bowl's getting full. I hope those are ones. God damn it. I think I have a session that day anyway, so I can. And he was doing really well until those ads hit him for, you know, being Barack Obama's pal, right? And then he sank like a stone. Andy McKenna couldn't finish, even though he'd spent all kinds of money. And Bill Brady came up the right side and won, because he actually did have a little cash at the end, and he could get his message out there, and he was able to win. The Republicans are very hierarchical as far as the party goes. It's like, whose turn is it? Okay, so, you know, after Jim Thompson, it was definitely Jim Edgar's turn. It was definitely George Ryan's turn. It was definitely Jim Ryan's term. It was definitely Judy Bartopinka's turn. 2010, they had a little problem with that. It was like nobody's turn. But the people who were running, whose turn was it, right? Turns out it was Bill Brady's, because he had run 4 years earlier, so it became his turn. Now whose turn is it? Dillard is kind of running a campaign of, it's my turn, right? So he lost that primary by like less than 200 votes, 193 votes. I can't imagine what that's like, right? You get blown out, it's fine, you just walk away. The people have spoken, damn them, right? You lose by 193 votes, you wake up screaming in the middle of the night for a very long time. And I'm not saying that to make fun of him. I really empathize with him. That would really mess with somebody's mind. He's been able to handle it pretty well, but he's not run a very good campaign this year because he just keeps talking about the past, and he doesn't really talk enough about the future. He mentions a few things, but it's mostly about the past. For him, it's my turn. And then we come to Bruce Rauner, who has, to many minds, come out of nowhere. Right? Who in the room has seen one of his TV ads, at least one of his TV ads? All right. Shake things up. Shake it, baby. And I helped. Some people remember that TV ad. So what, he made like $53 million last year. Not working, but he made $53 million last year. That's $1 million a week plus. That's over $200,000 every working day. Right? Bill Brady just made public his tax returns for 2012. He made $200,000. He made as much in 2012 as Bruce Rauner did in one day in 2012. Let that sink in. That's some real money, folks. And this is not something that just popped up out of nowhere, okay? I think 6 months ago, a lot of people, probably a lot of people in this room, thought that Bruce Rauner, he's another rich guy. We've seen it before, right? We saw McKenna. We saw Ron Goodwitz. They can't ever connect with people. They don't really get what campaigning is all about. They're just too up there. I mean, and this is not a slam on Ron Goodwitz, because he's a great guy and he does a lot of work for his party, and and people should be in the Republican Party should be proud of him. But one of the photos that he posted from 2010 campaign was he was in Southern Illinois and he was wearing French cuffs. And what the heck is that? I looked at that and went, no, I don't care how much freaking money he has. And he ended up getting, you know, he ended up getting, is $1 million a point. That's what he ended up with. I think like $11 million, 11 points, something like that. Not enough to win. $11 million. I could pay somebody to take that plunge in March. I could pay a lot of people to take that plunge in March. I could pay the whole room to take that plunge in March. But this guy, Rauner, has obviously been thinking about this. So you've only seen his ads or heard about him recently, but he's been working at this, it seems to me, for a very, very long time and laying the groundwork for this. He, more than anyone else running for governor today, seems to really enjoy going out there. There were a lot of people who figured that by December he would have been so sick of it he wouldn't even file his petitions. Just, like Bill Daley, right? He was out there like 3 days and went, I ain't kissing no more babies. I mean, literally 3 days. And they figured Rauner would end up the same way, and he hasn't. He's a natural campaigner. He loves being out there. Him and his showing off his little $18 watch. You know what? No, I won't use it. Never mind. I had a joke for that, but now you're here, so I won't use it. He is smart as heck. He's hired some out-of-state people and some in-state people who are very smart, people connected with Mark Kirk. And he's put together a heck of an operation. And he's got a theme, right? Shake it up. Shake up Springfield. And his term limits shtick of his, which is not a shtick. I mean, over a month ago, he had 150,000 signatures on his petitions. People are starting to connect with this guy, both on a personal level when he goes out to talk to them, and on a paid media level in his ads. His latest ad is about term limits. And, you know, unless the courts, we have a Supreme Court justice who won't comment on it, of course, but unless the courts knock it off the ballot like they did the last time, you know, he'll have a heck of a thing to run on in the fall. Right now, though, it's a great thing to help him connect with people who might not otherwise support him. He's pro-choice. He's not against gay marriage. He likes guns, but he's not a gun nut. He has a wife who's a Democrat and a liberal and a big contributor to liberal causes, who you probably won't see until after the primary ends. But you better believe if he wins on primary night, she's going to be standing right next to him with her Obama button on. I'm not trying to make fun of his wife either, believe me. I've never met her. I've heard she's a wonderful person. Where the heck am I? Thank you. Thought I was dreaming for a second there. This guy scares the living heck out of Springfield insiders because they take him at his word that he's going to come down here, go down there and see, I did forget where I was. He's going to go down there and shake it up and get in everybody's face. He advertised on my website. No campaign has ever advertised on my website before. No campaign has ever had that kind of money to advertise on my website before. Those are very expensive ads, as some of the advertisers in the room can tell you. It's for a very targeted audience: legislators, staff, media, governor's office, governor. It's not for the public at large. He bought an ad on the website. Why? So he could get into your faces and say, "I'm coming for you." That's a theme. That's a great theme. He is running, to my mind, the best Republican gubernatorial primary campaign since George Ryan's, or not, more than that, since I don't know when, actually. He's the best Republican gubernatorial candidate since George Ryan. Now, he's completely different from Ryan. Ryan was the ultimate insider. Let's go cut a deal. Let's get something done. He's trying to be anyway, exactly the opposite. He's saying he's exactly the opposite. But Ryan ran a great campaign, and Rauner is too. And I don't think I've ever seen a Republican gubernatorial primary candidate run a better campaign. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to win. The Republicans, like I said, have always been very hierarchical. But after years in the wilderness, a guy who isn't being fatalistic and saying, I'm the guy to work with Mike Madigan, right? He's saying, I'm going to kick Mike Madigan's butt. And they're starting to eat it up. I don't know if he's going to win, but he makes a pretty good case. I can make a case for all of those candidates if they could raise more than gas money. But so far, they haven't. And you got to be able to get your message out. And they haven't been able to get their messages out. And they won't unless they can start raising some money. But he has sucked up all the cash. Ron Gidwitz, who was with Kirk Dillard in 2010, went over to Rauner. It's a big, big blow to Dillard because Ron Gidwitz is the gateway to other rich Republicans. A lot of those folks write checks based on where Ron's at. And Ron's with Rauner, and he's, man, it's every day it's another $100,000 he's raising. Every day, $200,000. Writes himself another $500,000 check. So even if they do raise enough money to get their own messages across, they don't have enough to do to Rauner what is pretty easy to do to beat him, is to talk about this city and his ties to Chicago, and more specifically to the mayor of Chicago. They're buddies. Montana vacations together. Rauner actually put together a deal that helped Mayor Emanuel make quite a lot of millions of dollars. So he made him a millionaire. Vacations in Montana with him. He serves on boards and does other stuff for the mayor. And I had a poll conducted several months ago, back in the summer, that issue, being so closely connected to the mayor, was an 80% less likely for Republican primary voters. They don't like Rahm. They used to like Daley. Till the end there, nobody liked him. Everybody claimed, oh, I wasn't for him. Whatever. Couldn't even say his name in this room unless you were praising him. But I'm going to take you on the road, lady. But nobody's got the dough to do this. Nobody's got the cash. And if he wins that primary, he's going to run left real quick and run right at and there's like 32 weeks between primary day and election day. And if he spends $1 million a week, that's $32 million. He'll have plenty left over, and he'll make it all back anyway. Just imagine, $1 million a week at least. And if he wants to spend 64, what the heck? He's got it. I don't think he spent $53 million last year if he's still wearing an $18 watch. Anyway, all right, so what's going to happen? Well, the unions, which is another theme that he's using, right? Publican, what does he call them? I don't know, the labor bosses, public employee labor, I don't remember. He's got it down, though. He's got it down. It's in like every other sentence he's going after. AFSCME and the teachers' unions. Jack Roser, Mr. Pro-Life himself, you know, totally anti-gay marriage, is backing Rauner. Why? Because Jack Roser's biggest issue is the teachers' unions. He's hated them for decades. Rauner promises to go try to break the, or he didn't say tries, I'll break them. I'll bring them to their knees. And so Jack Roser is like, you're pro-choice? Fine. You don't care if gays get married? Fine, let's go after the teachers' unions. Anyway, the teachers' unions see this, AFSCME sees this, the other unions, the carpenters' union, you know, Rauner's been endorsed by one of the most anti-union groups in the state. The trades see it, everybody sees it, and the most cost-effective way of dealing with this guy is to beat him in the primary. So they're still discussing amongst themselves, the conversations are being escalated lately, about spending a few $1 million to try to beat Bruce Rauner in the primary. Tie him to Rahm, do the things that, you know, the Republican voters don't like, make sure they know that, which would be, you know, I think Karen Lewis would love to fund a advertising program that tied Bruce Rauner to Rahm Emanuel, frankly. I think she'd get a big kick out of that. The union would probably kick in a lot of money. And that's probably the other candidate's only hope, is that these unions get together. And then what happens? Well, nobody really knows. You know, then the other candidates are going to have to struggle amongst themselves. If they wanted to get endorsed by a union, and that could still happen too. You know, Kirk Dillard voted no on pension reform. Dan Rutherford was against it. If the unions endorsed one of those two candidates, I also did a poll on that, and the reaction to accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars from public employee unions was also 80% less likely. So if AFSCME endorses Kirk Dillard, then that's one way for Rauner to fight back against everything else. So I think it would be a big mistake if they did that. And then it brings us to the end. No, not quite the end. Brings us to Governor Quinn. The governor's had not a bad 6 months, right? Beginning of the year didn't start out too well. The last 6 months have worked out pretty well for him. ADM, as you know, wanted a subsidy to move to world headquarters in Chicago. Quinn didn't want to do it before pension reform. They didn't. Mike Madigan, after pension reform, said, I ain't going to do it. And they're moving here anyway. Why? Because it's the greatest city in the damn world. Right? Big plus for Quinn, because all the Republicans pretty much criticized him for that. Now they look a little goofy because they would have spent money when we didn't have to spend money. Marriage equality passed, in no small part to what the governor did. The pension reform bill passed, and he played a crucial role, particularly in the Senate, on passing that bill. John Cullerton wasn't exactly the most enamored person in the world of pension reform, since he had opposed the bill like 2 months earlier. He's maybe showing he's getting his arms around the job, but you know, he is Pat Quinn, and he doesn't have a campaign manager yet. He's still running a mom and pop shop over there, and if Rauner gets out of that primary, he ain't Bill Brady. He ain't Bill Brady. Bill is a good guy. You know what? If you sit down, and all of these guys actually, you sit down with Bill Brady and you talk to him, God, he's great. He's one of the best candidates to have a beer with. He's really relaxed and easygoing, great smile. And then you get him to try to smile for a camera and he looks evil. It's like, wow, man. Give him a couple beers first, maybe. That's my solution to everything, by the way. Worked for me. Except for speeches. I don't drink before speeches because I know that could be a problem. People who don't drink are afraid of revealing things about themselves, right? So that's why I don't drink before speeches. So you can't run a mom and pop operation if this guy Rauner gets out of the primary. You just can't. You got to run a top-notch 21st century program. And I don't see it yet, Brooke, Abden. And you better get going quickly. Now maybe you'll be the luckiest man in the world again. And whoever wins the Republican primary will drop out. Who the hell a year ago thought I'd be talking about Pat Quinn winning the Democratic primary anyway? Lisa Madigan was supposed to stomp him. And now she's like Jesse White, right? She's just going to be in office throughout her whole life and keep the same office and not do anything else. Well, people still like her. He's going to have to up his game. He ran a really good campaign for about a week in both the primary and the general election last year. And he beat Dan Hines in that primary in the last 10 days. And he is the greatest closer I've ever seen. And he pretty much copied everything he did against Hines to use against Brady in the last 10 days of the general election. And then, frankly, President Obama borrowed a lot of what Quinn did in 2010, refined it, took it in the 21st century, and used it in 2012 against the Republicans. So I'm not saying that he won't win. I'm just saying it's going to be a lot tougher to beat somebody who can raise as much money as he wants, has been thinking about it like nobody else I've seen in a long time. So he better get his act together. Sooner the better. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. Do we have a total? Oh, Jesus.
Miller, you're not going anywhere. Miller, all I can say is one word for you. Wetsuit. Okay. If you have
Thank
questions.
you for contributing.
We have a few minutes for questions. City Club people, go ahead, get the questions, and you'll be shocked. I have one for you. How will Rauner do in a real debate that he doesn't control?
Well, interestingly enough, there was a candidates debate scheduled for January 20-something, the League of Women Voters and another group, and 3 candidates agreed to do it, and 1 didn't. And you can guess who that one is. I don't think he'll do too bad. He seems, I've talked to him, he seems to be pretty quick on his feet. I think he's studied things. I don't think he knows the details of things. Like, Kirk Dillard can talk about the details of a bill until you fall asleep. Which is a good thing if you're a legislator or really into, not such a good thing if you're on the campaign stump. So I think he'll do all right. I mean, Reagan didn't know very many details either, even while he was president, if you believe his testimony after he left.
We'll see what happens when one of them calls him an SOB and see how he responds. Okay, that's my addition. This is Miller's show.
This is for the polar plunge, right there.
And Diaz for the Polar Plunge, Duluth General Services, $1,000. Thank you, Ann.
And I'm glad I didn't use that joke about you then. So.
You see this? You'll get it later, Miller. No.
Thank you, Ann.
Boy, hey, Skinny, I'll make sure he's there. Believe me. Of course, with Miller going there, this may cost you a ROM. All right. He'll bring up beer.
Bring several.
Dave Lundy. Pat Quinn is Lundy, you got to get your writing better. A Super 8 gold card holder. Very important to know. Bruce Rauner has 8 super houses. Right. You can use that. How do you think that will play in the general election? I apologize. That's a good question.
I think you will see much the same campaign that we saw last year in the presidential race. And if Quinn gets his act together. Remember, a lot of the people that, not a lot, but a significant number of the people that are contributing around her right now are also traditional Democratic contributors. But I think, I think that'll be effective. I think it'll be really effective. But if this guy's spending $1 million a week coming right out of the gate, he may have been defined by the time he tries to define Rauner.
Okay. This is from board member Frank Paul. Will union members vote in a Republican primary?
Well, there's a lot of Republican union members out there. I mean, you keep in mind that a lot of these AFSCME members got their jobs in Republican administrations. It's only the new hires that are, somewhat Democratic. The rest of them are all Republicans. So yeah, I think there'll probably be a push on to get that done, to try to get them out there and to take Republican ballots. The diehard Democrats aren't going to do it though, because they wouldn't do that for anybody. Not even Skinny Sheehan, they wouldn't do that for.
I will spare you the political science analysis of crossovers because it wouldn't make a difference. Okay, Al Grossbull. Where are you, Al? There he is, right in front. How does Governor Quinn do against Dillard or Rutherford? Kind of a hopeful question, right? All right.
Well, again, I don't necessarily believe that Bruce Rauner is a slam dunk. I think anything can happen, especially if money starts pouring in to take care of that. I think with Dillard, it's all social issues, because Dillard has moved. I don't think he's really moved. I think he's always believed it, but he's accentuated so much his far-right ideology this year that if Dillard is the guy, then we're going to see a lot of stuff like they used against Brady. Now, Rutherford accentuates more moderate leanings, but he's got basically the same record, the voting record, as Brady and Dillard. So I think they have to make the case for change. And so far, they've just been looking backwards. They're not making a case for change right now. They have to start looking forwards. Rauner's looking so far forward, he hasn't mentioned his Republican primary opponents yet. I mean, his term limit ad, who does it talk about? Pat Quinn. They have to start looking forward. And if they can do that against Quinn, maybe. But, man, it's tough. If you look at how Bill Brady lost in 2010, one of the big places he lost was Mark Kirk's congressional district, because they're more liberal on the social issues up there, and they were horrified. And they will be by these guys' voting record as well. So they'll have to run a way different campaign than Brady did.
Move over a little bit, Jesus. Don't think Brady's vote is not going to help in Kirk's district in the Republican primary on the pensions. But that's Paul Green talking, not Miller. Bruce Hoppel, where are you? You got to raise your hand, Bruce. This is not a. All right. And is it you're with D? What? TZ? What's the first letter? D is in David. I thought it was Greek letters. Delta, theta, zeta. Okay, here we go. Is it a given that the temporary income tax increase will be made permanent? If no, will there be a bill later for a graduated income tax? If you don't want to hand this, I'm sure Chris has come up with a quick answer.
I think one of the main reasons behind the Rauner campaign and behind his push for pension reform is to stop that progressive income tax from ever being implemented in Illinois. But reality is, if they don't make it permanent or extend it or phase it out over a period of years, then they're going to have to deal right away with some major, huge billions of dollars in budget cuts. So this coming budget that the governor will unveil in March, I think, is going to have $2 to $3 billion hole in it because the fiscal year, half the fiscal year, the income tax hike doesn't exist, right? So budgets have to be based on current law. So you're going to get a little small preview of that in just a few months. Nobody's going to like it. If you look at 2012, and I know it was a big Democratic here in Illinois, and that the districts are pretty strongly Democratic here, legislative districts in Illinois. But the Republicans used the tax increase against Democrats. And in the Senate, the Democrats used the Senate Republican budget cutting plan against their candidates. And as Leader Radonio can tell you, on Election Day, those voters took didn't mind the real tax cut and feared the imaginary budget cuts and voted Democratic. So, I mean, that in itself can be an issue in the campaign, and especially when half the half the fiscal year there is no tax increase revenues. So the governor can say we can restore all these, but we gotta. So the answer is, I think if Quinn's reelected, I think we get some sort of extension. It may get phased out over time. I think if the Republicans are reelected, I think Rutherford has said it's got to be the whole issue's on the table. I think, you know, Dillard and everybody else have said no, absolutely not. But the reality is that's a lot of money. And now that we're making pension payments when we weren't before, that's the money that you can't get anywhere else except cutting.
If there aren't enough votes for a progressive income tax in the House, what comes next?
Well, it depends if we have what's going on with the current temporary income tax increase. There are not enough votes in the House right now for a progressive income tax. I think there are in the Senate. I don't think the Speaker is fully on board yet. They passed a flawed one several years ago, but it was an imaginary bill. It didn't really mean anything. But if they don't extend that income tax increase out, there will be serious, strong liberal pressure to do something about it. And we'll see. Right now, I don't see it. But I just don't. I really just couldn't tell you. There's so many variables out there. But there will be extraordinary pressure to do it. Whether they'll succeed, you know, there was extraordinary pressure not to do pension reform by mainly the same group of people. And look what happened there. So.
All right, last question. Normally we don't, I don't ask questions when it's just the first name. Name is Clint. I don't know who you are, but since he mentioned Shakespeare, remember, cowards die many times before their death. The valiant taste death but once. Next time you want a question, put your whole name on here. But the question is a good one to close. Are you ready, Miller?
You know, we could go a lot faster if you didn't have all these interviews.
Just trying to give complete sentences. Just trying to give complete sentences as opposed to the on-ahs. Here we go. This is a toughie. Are you ready? Ashley, you may have to help him. How has Oscar influenced how you covered the State House?
Oscar's my little puppy. His mommy's right over there. Stand up. Oscar's mommy. Stand. Oh, she doesn't want to stand up. All right. He is a soft-coated Wheaton Terrier, and we got him almost a year ago. He just turned a year old. And he's the only thing in the world that could ever get me out of the bars at 10 o'clock at night. Because I got to go home and take care of the dog. He seriously has all these wives and everything else, and the only thing that's ever been able to get me home early is a puppy. So yeah, he's changed my life a lot. It's probably hurt my writing because, well, actually, I've long said that nothing happens in bars after 10 o'clock except drinking. So there's no stories out there after 10 because everybody's drunk by then anyway, so you don't really get all that much. But he's cool, you know. We sits by. When I blog during the day, he's always with me, and it's a nice little, you know, gets me up and gets me away from the computer for a while, you know, go play with the dog. It's been great. I can't imagine life without him. Anyway, thank you very much for that question.
Big round of applause.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.